Hey, this is April, and this show, SetSet Show, discusses cannabis, psychedelics, and altered states of consciousness generally. It's intended for audiences 21 and over. Also, I am not a medical expert. If you are looking to engage with psychedelic substances, please consult your physician before doing so. Today I'm joined by Sand Symes, an extraordinary plant medicine guide who works deeply with feminine energy to facilitate healing journeys. In our conversation, Sand and I discuss the unique role of feminine energy in psychedelic work and how plant medicine can help us reconnect with our intuition and uncover profound self-awareness. Throughout our chat, Sand shares her experiences guiding women through transformative healing journeys that embrace their inner strength. 50% of all people who engage with psychedelics to support this awareness choose to work with psilocybin. Let's dive in with Sand Symes and explore the healing power of feminine energy in plant medicine.
I'd like to start with, if you want to introduce yourself and your work, and then the medicine that you do work with.
My name, of course, is Sand Symes. I'm a modern medicine woman. I am a psychedelic guide. I am a former social worker, so very much grounded in things like internal family systems and childhood cycles and our ancestral lineages and our parents or our caregivers. I'm very deeply steeped in the past to understand what my present life is looking at and how I'm going to deal with that for the future. I am a seer, meaning as a 6-7-year-old little girl, I could see energies and shapes. I could see ancestors. I could see cosmic beings. And then that very quickly disappeared when adults around me thought that was too weird and shut that down very quickly and very brutally. And then came back when I was 29 years old through the power of medicine, opened up that capillary again. And I also work as a women's empowerment coach and mentor. I am a shamanic practitioner of 22 years, and I've been sitting with the power and the sacredness of plant medicine for over 2 decades.
Thank you. And I have met Sand in person, and her energy is, it's really nice to be around. So the medicine is in you. And what medicine do you work with? And did you come to one specific medicine and then that led you to others?
Great question. My first meet with a sacred medicine was with cannabis when I was in college, which I think is a very popular and common route for many of us. And with cannabis, what I enjoyed about meeting her, and the pronoun her for all of Pachamama's medicine. So when I met her, when I met cannabis, I really enjoyed how she made me feel, because I have a lot of energy, a lot of burn energy, a lot of fire energy. I can move very quickly. So she was my first medicine that taught me how to slow down. So I'd never felt my body, and I was like 16 when I first ingested cannabis. I'd never felt my body as relaxed and open as I did when I first ingested cannabis. And I stayed with that medicine for a couple of years. And then I forgot about it. I started on life like many other people do. And then alcohol became a big part of my life at that point. In my late teens, especially in the UK, it's a huge drinking culture in our young people. So alcohol took over. And in the wisdom keeper of my 59 years around the sun now, for me personally, alcohol doesn't work well with my system at all. But the medicines work beautifully with my system. And why was I reaching for alcohol? It was for confidence. It was for inspiration. It was to fit in. It was all those things that in my early days, I was looking for that kind of substance to move me transport me. What I learned with my very first ayahuasca medicine journey, which was 21 years ago in Amsterdam, which I'll never forget. In that journey, the mother, ayahuasca, the mother, as many of your listeners know, when I met her, it was like meeting the ultimate sacred grandmother in the darkest of dark and the lightest of light. She scared me so much, and yet there was a deep impulse inside of me that I wanted to sit and understand what I thought I was understanding her, And after many journeys later, I realized the inquiry, the sacred mirror was, she was inviting me to understand myself. Over a period of 16 years, I sat with ayahuasca in the jungles of Ecuador and Peru, and sat with some incredible medicine teachers, as well as the beautiful medicine men and women of the Ecuadorian Peruvian rainforests that sit with this medicine. I also sat with ayahuasca in various parts of the world and beautiful teachers who really had the sacredness of this medicine come to fruition. And then one of my medicine sisters and friends and teachers and mentors, my dear Peruvian medicine woman, who I was just sharing with you, April, before our call, I apprenticed with her for 16 years with the medicine of Huachuma, which can be known also as San Pedro, which is the cactus. And understanding that medicine, a very different medicine, but also transported me to find out all the different pieces and parts of me. So my inquiry, my dance, my learning, the biggest teachers in most of my years in plant medicine have been ayahuasca and Huachuma. When I met the medicine of psilocybin, which was about 9 years ago, I was blown away at the different journey that psilocybin opened up for me. It was the first time that I'd felt that I was sitting more and more in a controlled seat of the experience and moving into the places where I wanted to go to do the deepest work. And with the other medicines, I'd felt that I was completely out of control for a long time, until I started to understand the medicine and get taught by the teachers how to use the medicine in a particular way. So, and one of my first journeys with psilocybin was, one of my intentions was, how can I be with this medicine and share this with the world as we want to, when deep inside of my womb, I was terrified in my physical body of the legislation system that is keeping us small and keeping this medicine away from our humanity. And the depth of the roar that was inside of me, of the pain of that. So my teacher inside of that particular medicine is the Queen of the Fairies, which might sound really woo-woo to some of your listeners. And she took me to my birthright of Ireland and took me on this journey of understanding and seeing how psilocybin and mushroom has been in that land, which is my ancestral land, forever. The famous tales and the myths and the legends of the leprechaun sitting on top of a toadstool with the rainbow. The pot of gold was never about money or a pot of gold of financial success. It's your birthright of understanding a deeper truth of who we are. And that birthright is the gold, is your awakening, is that higher consciousness. That emboldened me with that medicine, which was beautiful. So I work with psilocybin, and I also was introduced 8 years ago to the medicine MDMA, non-plant-based, as we know, not earth-based, very much a synthetic. And I've been in and out of my own internal debate of this medicine and the gift that it is to our humanity. And my downloads in all of my medicine journeys in this inquiry have been, where do you think, like when MDMA has spoken to me, where do you think I came from? The downloads from this complexity of these chemical components, where do you think I came from? I came from source. I came from, and then we can fill in the blank, I came from life itself. I came from pure consciousness. I came from the existence, which is exactly the same source where ayahuasca and Huachuma and San Pedro and mushrooms come from, that same intelligence that is feeding and serving and informing our humanity, partner with this incredible intelligence. So with all of that said, in 21 years, I've got a culmination of the three medicines I work with is psilocybin, cannabis, and MDMA. I do not work with ayahuasca. I don't work, obviously, with San Pedro or DMT. I don't work with those medicines.
Right. Meaning you don't facilitate journeys for
Correct.
others, but you participate and ingest
Yeah.
the medicine for yourself at various times. Yes.
Yes, I do. I
Great.
do.
Thank you for that rundown. I just want a quick recap. So for people that don't understand, ayahuasca is a combination of two vines. There's right, isn't that the ultimate mixture of ayahuasca? There's one vine and then there's 4 different vines or something, and then there are a variety of other vines with which it can be.
It's the vine and the bulb, which, and in terms of if we can imagine that, the vine and the bulb, it's like the masculine and feminine coming together. Most of our medicines have got a feminine component of that masculine and feminine energy, the yin, the yang. So the ayahuasca with the vine and the bulb, imagine it as the masculine and feminine coming together, like a chanupa, the chanupa pipe. My husband and I were part of a Lakota path for almost a decade, and my husband is a chanupa carrier. The pipe of that is the bowl, which is where we place the tobacco. And then the stem of that pipe is the masculine. The bulb is the feminine and the stem is the masculine. It's similar with most of the medicines.
Yeah, I think of the cap and the stem. Okay, so thank you for that visual and that description. I wanted to make the distinction between the fact that San Pedro it's cactus, right? So
Yes.
you've got vines, you have cacti, and then of course psilocybin comes from fungi, and that's a mushroom, and the cap and stem.
Right.
Then MDMA is always going to be synthesized, but is the original chemistry, it's synthesized from a blueprint of sassafras, which is a flower, I believe. So there's some nature in there. It does come from source. I don't know. I don't think if you consume sassafras, you're going to get exactly the same effect as
No.
if you, yeah.
Let's be grateful for that the partnership, which is all of this medicine work, is partnering with an intelligence that is, we can argue it's greater than the intelligence that we are most operating from in everyday life. But what it does is it meets our deepest blueprints of our intelligence. We are source. We are this intelligence. And we have been covered over and buried, and all of that intelligence has been stuffed down. And we could wax lyrically for several decades, you and I, April, on that topic alone. But that has these medicines, the power and the sacredness of the power is the sacredness of these medicines. And MDMA, I put MDMA in that exact same category. The work that I've done with myself, always working with myself first. I am my first client, and working with the clients that I've worked with, it's mind-blowing what is available in terms of the deepest possible change that we can make as humans on this planet. And I also am very aware, and I'm cautious when I say that, is it's not everybody is going to walk through that door and that gateway. And that's okay, because we were given free will, we were given choice. But I hope that people educate themselves around these topics. And that's why, April, I love you. I love what you're doing. And this podcast is educating us a little bit more, because we have been indoctrinated with the dogma that we don't use the word medicine, we use the word drugs. When we talk about any of these, whether it's ayahuasca, it's a drug. And in my world, I'm so against any word being called drug around these medicines. It's a medicine at its very definition helps to move our humanity, the human pain, into the light in some shape or form.
It certainly does that. I was thinking MDMA was, aside from cannabis, which is a weed, technically, right?
Yes.
As we're going through the plant kingdom. So MDMA was, aside from cannabis, was my first psychedelic. And yeah, I guess actually psilocybin was, but the one that changed my life was MDMA. Yeah. And I feel grateful that found me in my 20s. And it certainly isn't, it was not pure at that time. And I didn't have a source that was probably a good source. Didn't have to, because fentanyl wasn't in the picture really. But I understand why you connected with it. Yeah. Even though you've connected with lots of hallucinogens and sacred nature, I understand why you made an exception for
And really,
yeah. So how have you seen women in particular use, because you and I are here because we've used these medicines and we've seen our life change for the better. So how are you facilitating women, shepherding them through to, like, you give them full disclosure, I'm going to be working with Sand at the end of this month, and she will be working with me, facilitating an experience, and we'll have intake interviews leading up to that medicine journey and then after. And so there's a lot of preparation and there's a lot of integration. You get to know these people. So how do you prepare people for what you know is about to happen and leave it open so that they are in charge of their journey? The tension there is interesting to me.
It's a great question, April. It was a dance. I lean very heavily into 35 years of working with women, not in medicine, but working with women from my start as a social worker. So working with women in prisons, working with women with substance misuse and domestic violence and eating disorders, and all of the ways that walking on this earth in a body that is calcified and in a cage. And this is when I get moved to my core. And for most of it, it's but for the grace of God go I. The saying there is the women that I had the honor and the privilege, and still do have the honor and privilege of working with, some of our most marginalized community groups, because of where they were born. A zip code defines people, color of skin defines people, ability versus disability defines people. And so the belief of the story that all of us carry inside, how crippling those stories can be, that will define the dance that woman will take for some of them, for some of us, for the rest of our life. And so as a social worker, I was constantly a loud voice on behalf of the marginalized groups that didn't feel that they had a voice. And I was angry at the systems that didn't support the women that I was supporting in a way that I felt that they could be supported. The background of that, including my own background, my own story of my own physical abuse in my own family, verbal abuse, very angry father, mother that couldn't stand up to that dominant male in our family. And I love my father. He passed over a decade ago, but that's what took me into the plant medicine ceremonies in the first place, was to understand the psyche of the masculine male inside a male body, to understand where that power over comes from, so that I could meet it in the field. So I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life either as a victim of my own circumstances or carrying really toxic stories, which really led me to not trusting men for decades. So those stories are so deeply wired inside of us from whatever start we had in life. So I lean into that experience, and I've worked with thousands of women right across the spectrum, and CEOs and visionaries and leaders of their field. When I met medicine for the first time and realized I could work with women with medicine, I started to see the incredible potential of the moment when a woman meets herself, sees the stories that she's been living in as stories and not as truth anymore. And with the medicine, as we know, it starts to move the neuroplasticity of the medicine, meaning she starts to see the stories for what they are, that it's a story and not true. Her brain and her nervous system, then her physiology starts to work in a newer truth. If the story isn't that, then what would be the new story that we could start to claim fully? Not just a happy clappy mantra that is out there, a lot of the manifestation, like, oh, just say, I am beautiful, I am beautiful, I am beautiful over and over in a mirror. And one day you might believe it. But most of us, that will never. Why? Because literally our physical body is working against us. It's not the mental process, it's the physiology, because that story is so deeply wired. Our nervous system is finding evidence constantly of finding, I am ugly, or I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough. And when we really understand the benevolence and the power and the majesty of these medicines, when the first time I sat with woman and she looked at herself in a mirror, like I was laid through the medicine, and saw the deepest truth, not just her beauty of her physical beauty, but her inner landscape of that beauty, the radiance of her. And she started to speak to herself and the little girls that are inside. I do a lot of work with internal family systems and different frameworks that from my social work background in this work. I was blown away by seeing a woman going for her soul retrieval so masterfully, so powerfully, so clearly, that as long as she kept doing that, she kept the new story alive inside of her after that day of medicine, then she's got a chance to truly change the depth of the narrative of her story that is running through the marrow of her bones, in her nervous system, in her existence of who she thought herself to be. The cage gets open. The woman sees the truth of who she is. She feels it. She can purge and release in all sorts of different beautiful ways of a story that is no longer true. And then she claims it's the sovereignty, it's her birthright to see and feel and know herself, of the sovereignty of who she really is. And that I was blown away. And of course, the first place I went was, why the hell did I not know about the power of these medicines all those years ago, when I was a social worker that was literally banging my head against the proverbial brick wall? It's almost like it's so calcified. It's almost impossible that we're going to break the intergenerational trauma that keeps us in these calcified cages. So that is the power of the medicine. And from that moment, that was it. I'm giving my life to this work now, because there is no, for me, talk therapy, which I do talk therapy. I go in and out of therapy. I've got a great therapist. She's more of a coach with me these days. So I'm not dismissing any part of our healing modalities that are out there. I'm not. When talk therapy takes us to a certain point, the medicine takes us to the next point. For me, this is my belief from my own witnessing in my own life and the life of hundreds of women now, these medicines, seeing their life change beyond what they were able to access in some of the other modalities that are more legally available on this planet.
Not surprised. And you also have to be ready for it too, right?
Yeah.
One of the conversations that we had, and what inspired recording all of your, not all of your knowledge, but some of your knowledge. And that is, there's so much conversation around microdosing. Microdosing is a much, much more user-friendly, approachable idea in terms of how to ingest psychedelics for a great portion of the population. Your response was, I don't have the exact words, but essentially you said microdosing is how women can start to think about how their life may be different one day, right? And just, you
Yes.
don't go and meet Mother Aya and the next day everything changes. Sometimes it's the microdose pill and protocol that you do for a little bit. And I can't tell you how many people that I talk to that share with me that they were in a place of self-exploration and tried a lot of different medicine. But at the end of the day, it was microdosing where they go, oh, I don't think I need those cigarettes anymore. It was microdosing. I was like, oh, I don't need that friend anymore. It was microdosing. It was like, why am I eating meat? It was really interesting. Those are the people who are coming to me, and they're in as much shock as I am that it was the microdosing that kind of snuck in there.
Yeah.
And you called that. So I would love to
Yeah.
hear more about how you see how microdose is opening the door for so many people to reclaim their soul's desire.
Yeah. This is such a great topic and conversation. I'm grateful for the microdosing conversation. As you said, April, the medicine world isn't for everybody. The doorway will appear, they'll be there. It isn't for everybody at all. There are other healing modalities. I'm also a breathwork teacher. Breathwork is a powerful, super powerful medicine. It's a superpower that we have. It's our breath. It's another birthright that we have. And obviously the day of the medicine or an immersion, the beauty of the microdosing is you don't have to, and then I can go back to what we were talking about in the last 20 minutes. You don't have to go to Peru or Ecuador or a country of origin to take the medicine and have some life-changing alterations in your life. And microdosing is proving that over and over again. And we know that the research is coming out that's really supportive. In fact, it's outrageously supportive of how many people are making life changes a subtle change here, a subtle change there. So for microdosing, for me, it is a gateway, I believe, again, especially for women, because you can feel the medicine and it's subtle, but a woman can feel it. She knows it. What do I mean by feel it? I'll use my own example. When I'm microdosing, and I've been microdosing on and off now for about 2.5 years. And when I'm microdosing, my menopausal foggy brain, it's like the clouds. It's like a moment of, it's like almost angelic as the clouds separate and I start to get clarity about my work or a relationship or somebody I'm working with or one of my children, and the fogginess of the menopausal brain disappears and I get the clarity that I can remember that I had in this body in my 30s and my 40s. I'm 59 now, so the foggy brain kind of comes sometimes with age. Microdosing for me, it was at a time of day if I would reach for a glass of wine, and I'm not a drinker. Alcohol's not impacted my life for a long time, but I could reach a very old pattern of mine. Alcohol was a big medicine, as I said, certainly in the UK in my teenage years and my 20s. And microdosing, it's almost like it's this voice that says, do you really want that? Is there a reach? So I'm watching and witnessing my somatic body shape, which literally has me reaching, going for something. I find my body, I'm reaching for something. I'll go to the fridge or I'll go to the pantry where I know those gorgeous chocolate chip cookies are languishing in a cupboard. And I feel and witness my body going to the cupboard. I witness and feel my body with my hand that goes towards the chocolate chip cookie. But my body is going, nah, I don't want it. We have such old patterns that still show up somatically in a body shape that have me really walking to a part of the kitchen, putting my arm out to open a pantry door, that those somatic shapes of my body are in action. My body is in action to go towards something that I believe a tiny part of me wants. Microdosing has a bigger voice that says, it's like the inner wisdom, wise part of me that says, nah, you don't want that.
Interesting.
And then I can walk away. So talk about slowing down the medicine's intelligence to that finite detail of witnessing the movement of literally walking my body to the old patterns that I once had that aren't serving me, and getting to that moment where it was going to be part of an ingestion and a valve gets switched on with the microdosing, and the intelligence of the mushroom says, you don't need that. And then it kicks into my body's own intelligence, and my body's intelligence is saying, you actually don't need that. So I'm overriding very deep, old somatic patterns of where my body is taking me to those places. It's a somatic body shape that we have. We're holding a phone, we're scrolling, we're doing things, those body shapes that take us to those old toxic patterns. And there's a moment when for me, my own personal journey, and certainly for a lot of the women that I'm working with who are microdosing, we call it a valve. The valve gets switched up. The voice of reason gets louder. The white wisdom keeper takes up more space. And in that internal landscape, there's a pause, and it's, nah, you don't really need this. Or enough already with the numbing out or the distraction or the disassociated somatic patterns that we all have that have been a massive part of our infrastructure in our humanity for generations. The key here is a woman gets to feel and witness the changes from her mental process, her emotional process, her physiology. And then I wrap that around with her spirit is alive and awake and is informing her of better choices.
That is so well said, as particularly when you describe the medicine in a microdose as when the medicine is slowed down and fine-tuned to such great detail. I would never think of a microdose in that way. I would just like, oh, it's not fine-tuned. It's just this. But it doesn't mean that it isn't powerful still.
Yeah.
It acts in a different way because it's not
Right.
going to bang you over the head, but it will reveal something
Right.
to you, and it less will
It's the
I
same
think
intelligence, isn't it,
it's
April?
and it knows how to find you. It
Yeah.
really does.
Size doesn't matter if we are meeting the sacredness of the medicine, meaning we're meeting the intelligence of this medicine. Whatever that dosage is can take us on a slightly different journey for sure. But the intelligence is the core, regardless of whatever the dosage is. The intelligence is right there.
And the intelligence does not leave your system. So I want to talk about once you have ingested intelligence in any form of sacred nature medicine, there's an integration. And the important distinction between a medicine like this and one you're prescribed by your doctor, that's a pharmaceutical for the most part, is that idea is that you're not taking psilocybin capsules every day for the rest of your life, right? You will not be taking them at a certain point, and that is the point. But because the medicine is in your system, you want to use that intelligence. And that is what integration is, right? How are you taking what you've learned with this medicine and moving forward in your life in a way with now that you have this intelligence, both what's been revealed and now that it's in your system. So how do you encourage listeners to start to integrate in a way that's meaningful and also acknowledging that our lives are busy and sometimes the step that we agreed to take was to take the medicine. Maybe we saw some things, and if we really want to like drill down on that, then we're more open to integration. But if we're not, then integration just seems like homework, I think, and it's something that people avoid. So how can we make integration like the medicine? It sneaks up on you.
Yeah. This is so great. And for the listeners, I'm sure many of them are nodding their heads in going, yep, that's me. I went to this ceremony or I ingested a medicine and it was wonderful. And at that point, at that peak point in my life, I vowed I would do X, Y, Z, and I would never do again ABC, right? So it's like any form of peak experience in our life. We can go to a personal development peak experience, right? And we write and we journal and we make all of these promises to ourselves and then we break them. Why? Why do we do that? And in the nicest possible way, again, with our own infrastructure of our beautiful humanity, our humanness is we are, first of all, we are innately lazy. We were always looking for shortcuts. How can I get the fastest? How can I get there? What if I shortcut this way? What if I shortcut that way? How can I get what I want with least effort and least input? And every one of us have got that somewhere in our psyche, because if you're walking on this planet as a two-legged human, you are, that's what I mean by two-legged. If you are a human being on this planet, we have in our psyche the how can I get more or get better with least effort? So how do we know that? How do we work with that? How do we keep the incredible intelligence, as you just said so beautifully, April, alive inside of us? And after all these years of of doing it the easier way, the hard way, in essence, is doing it by myself. I have not got the motivation or the inspiration or the bandwidth or the wherewithal to keep going by myself. I just haven't. And I've tried. Holy shit. I've really tried, because I thought that was what we meant to do. And especially in the original, some of the more traditional models of plant medicine, we'd be on a dieta, a little diet of various things that we weren't eating or participating in. We would have the most astonishing day of medicine. We would have an integration circle the next day, and then we'd all go into our own lives. And it's get on with it. Just keep going as your integration. And so for the first 10 years of my medicine journey, that was my model, doing it by myself. And I was lost, April. I got lost. I really got lost. I was left to my own interpretations, and I was young in the medicine. So my ego was telling me certain things. The shadow parts of me were telling me certain things. I was all over the place and believed that the medicine was telling me this, but over the years realized, we've got all of these different parts inside of you, Sand, who all want this voice. And perhaps half of them or most of them are nothing to do with the medicine. I didn't have a teacher at that time. I didn't have a community of people at that time that I could pick up a phone and say, I'm having these wildest dreams and these things are happening to me. Can you help me understand this? So for the first decade, I really was by myself in that integration process. So I was integrating for 10 years the wrong way, the way that I wouldn't recommend for anybody. And yet that still is a very powerful model that is out there. So what I would say certainly, and again, in this line of for woman, is to do it together in a community, whether that's a sisterhood or a community of beings that are on this journey with you, that you have guides. And I don't even want to put the word teacher in this place because some of our most beautiful people in our community wouldn't see themselves as a teacher necessarily, but they've been working in the medicine world for 2 decades, 3 decades. And they have experience. It's the true wisdom keepers who have experience, who can share some of the experiences, what happened for them. And the more that we open our conversation with others and listen to other people's experiences, it starts to make more sense in our experience. So it's almost like by osmosis, we're in an incubator, learning from each other, sharing with each other, moving with each other in a safe, then that's ultimately a safe place of expression, a safe place of being able to say, this changed for me, or I need support here, not understanding with this part. So in any kind of community, we'd love it to be a non-hierarchical community, and yet know which wisdom keepers we can lean into who've got experience with this medicine or have been doing this for a decade and a half or 20 years here, or have got this experience. It's a long way of saying integration for me to sustain the changes that we come to this medicine for. I believe the only way we can do this is in community or with each other and not to do it by ourselves. No, really not to do it by ourselves, which is why I got so excited when you told me about your 10-week protocol in October for, I don't know, you're going to talk about that as well. But doing a protocol with microdosing with a group of people that are all in it together with different intentions, but are doing it together as a collective, the power of that from an energetic point of view, you're creating a very powerful vortex of energy with 100 people. And then because I also work with ancestors, those 100 people are bringing all of the ancestral lineage into that field. So 100 physical people might be in that energetic container, but trust me, there are thousands and thousands of beings that are being supported in that work. Because when we start to make a change, all of that past story energetically ripples back and changes our ancestral lineage, and it changes the future. There used to be a powerful statement in many indigenous communities that said, when one person on this planet starts to make the deepest, most fundamental change of breaking old trauma, intergenerational trauma or stories or toxic wounds. It doesn't have to be trauma with a capital T, but just the old stories that we've been handed down for generations. When one person starts to break that story and break that line, it used to be we affect 7 generations back and 7 generations future. But that was around 30, 40 years ago. Now, with all of the research, we understand epigenetics and we understand the energetics of our infrastructure as a human being. When we start making fundamental changes, it goes right back to source when we first picked up that story of separation. And then we are literally changing the trajectory of our humanity, one plant at a time.
Yes. And one hopeful person at a time, right? That's why people turn to these medicines, right? They have tried other things, and this is, in a lot of ways, their last hope. You want people to have a good experience and to get the most out of it. And it's through instruction by people like you who are willing to share what you've learned over the decades. So thank you so much for being our guest today. I appreciate your knowledge. And I would like to leave listeners with how they can find you. So if they learn more about the facilitation that you do with others or the guided ancestral breath work. That was my first ancestral breath work journey. It was incredible. And I did that with Sand in the last month. Yeah. How can people find you?
They can find me with my name at www.sandsymes.com. They can find me there. And from that place, then that's a landing place. They can come talk to me from there. I'm on some of the social media platforms, but come talk to me, read about me, let people do their own homework. I'd love to be in conversation with anyone that's serious about learning more. And as an educator in this field, it's beautiful to be in that position and being able to share some of our experiences, especially when people are coming into this work newly for the first time.
They're in good hands with you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, April.
Thank you for joining us for today's show. I'm April, and I'll be back the next installment of SetSet Show, where we cover everything you need to have a safe, supported psychedelic experience in the wild.